Silent Screams presents. I've never been one to believe in the supernatural. Ghosts, spirits, or any of that. I've always chalked it up to stories made up by people trying to make sense of the unexplained. But after what happened to me that night, I don't know what to believe anymore. Let me take you back to that night. I remember it clearly. It was late, much later than usual. I had just finished my shift at the cafe, the one just off the main road on the outskirts of town. The streets were empty, and the usual hum of the city had faded into an unsettling silence. It was the kind of night that felt wrong, like something was off in the air. You know that feeling? Where the hair on the back of your neck stands up for no reason, and every shadow feels like it's watching you. I didn't know it then, but that was the night everything would change. As I was walking home, the street lights flickering above me, I noticed something strange. At the end of the road, just before the old, abandoned house, there was a faint, glowing light. At first, I thought it was a car or someone's porch light. But as I got closer, I realized it wasn't any of those things. It was coming from the house. The abandoned one. The house had been empty for as long as I could remember. I'd heard rumors about it, whispers from the older folks in town. Some said it was cursed, others claimed it was haunted. But, like I said, I didn't believe in that stuff. I figured it was just a rundown house that nobody bothered with anymore. But that light, it wasn't right. It wasn't a warm, welcoming light. It was cold, almost otherworldly. I should have turned back. I should have ignored it. But instead, my feet moved before I could even think about it. There was something pulling me toward it, something I couldn't explain. When I reached the front gate, it creaked open as if it had been waiting for me. I hesitated for a moment, standing in the yard, looking at the overgrown grass, the broken windows, the crumbling porch steps. The light flickered again, and that strange pull grew stronger. I stepped forward, and that's when I heard it. A low, almost imperceptible sound coming from inside the house. It wasn't quite a voice, but it sounded like a whisper, a calling. It was a woman's voice, but it was distorted, like the words were being stretched and pulled through a thick layer of fog. "Come closer." I froze. The whispering stopped, but the air around me grew colder. I could see my breath now, each exhale visible in the dim light. My heart pounded in my chest, and every instinct told me to turn around and run. But my feet remained rooted to the spot. It wasn't just the voice. It was the house itself. Something about it felt alive, watching me. I knew then that there was something in there, something I couldn't see, but I could feel. I stepped onto the porch, the wooden boards groaning beneath my weight. The front door, which should have been locked or boarded up, creaked open slowly as if inviting me in. I stepped inside. The house smelled of decay, dust, and something sweet. But there was no furniture, no signs of life. The walls were bare, the floor covered in a thick layer of dirt and cobwebs. The light I had seen was now gone, replaced by an unnatural dimness. I looked around, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. There was something on the floor, something white. I moved closer. It was a piece of cloth, torn and stained. My fingers brushed it, and I froze. Suddenly, the temperature dropped even further. I could see my breath in front of me, swirling in the air, and I heard it again, the whisper. "Leave, now." I spun around, but there was no one there. No one but me, alone in the dark house. I should have left. I should have run as fast as I could. But I didn't. I wanted to know what was happening. Why was I here? Why had I come? The house seemed to breathe, shifting, groaning as if it was alive. I could feel something behind me, just beyond my peripheral vision, but every time I turned, nothing was there. That's when I saw it. The door at the end of the hallway. It was different. There was a faint, almost invisible glow coming from beneath it, like something was waiting behind it, something trying to get out. Before I knew it, my feet moved again, as if they had a mind of their own. I approached the door, my hand reaching out toward the handle. Just as my fingers brushed it, I heard the voice again. But this time, it wasn't a whisper. It was loud, clear, and full of anguish. "Don't open it." I froze. My heart raced in my chest. I wanted to turn around. I wanted to leave, but I couldn't. Something about that voice kept me rooted to the spot. Without thinking, I twisted the handle. The door creaked open, and a rush of cold air hit me. The light in the room beyond flickered, casting eerie shadows against the walls. I stepped forward, my body shaking. The room was empty, save for an old rocking chair in the corner. The chair was moving, slowly rocking back and forth as though someone, or something, was sitting in it. I stepped inside, drawn to it, unable to resist. The chair stopped, and I felt the temperature plummet even more. Then, it happened. From the corner of my eye, I saw a figure, a silhouette of a woman, standing in the doorway. She was tall, impossibly thin, her long black hair hanging in front of her face. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and her hands were twisted, elongated, as if they had been stretched over time. She stood there, unmoving, just watching me. I couldn't move. My legs felt like lead, my body frozen in place. I tried to speak, but my voice wouldn't come out. Then, she whispered again, louder this time, her voice scraping against my very bones. "Why did you come?" The question echoed in my mind, and I felt a coldness seep into my soul. I couldn't answer. I didn't know. And then, the floor beneath me gave way. The next thing I knew, I was falling, tumbling through the darkness, unable to stop myself. My body hit the ground hard, and I could feel something wet and sticky on the floor, but I didn't know what it was. When I opened my eyes, I was in a different room. This one was small, almost claustrophobic. The walls were covered in old wallpaper, peeling at the edges, and the air smelled like mildew and old books. The room was dim, lit only by a flickering candle on the floor. I tried to stand up, but as I did, I felt a sharp pain in my ankle. Looking down, I saw a thin, black cord wrapped around my foot, holding me in place. Then, from the shadows, I heard a voice. "You shouldn't have come." It wasn't the woman from before. This voice was lower, darker, full of malice. It came from somewhere in the room, but I couldn't see who was speaking. I tugged at the cord, but it wouldn't budge. I was trapped. I had to get out. I had to. A loud thump interrupted my thoughts, and I turned, terrified. The woman was standing at the door, her head tilted at an impossible angle. Her eyes were wide, black voids, and her mouth stretched into a grin that was too wide to be human. "Leave, or stay forever." The door slammed shut behind her. I was alone. Again. And then the whispering began. From all around me, it filled the room. The walls, the floor, the ceiling, everywhere. I couldn't escape it. "Come closer." The darkness closed in, and I realized it was too late to leave. The whispering grew louder, echoing in my ears, reverberating off the walls until it felt as if the house itself were alive, suffocating me. My breath caught in my throat, and for a moment, I thought I might pass out from the sheer terror of it. I tried to move, but my foot was still tangled in that cold, black cord. I pulled harder, but it only tightened, as if the room itself were unwilling to let me go. The woman, the one with the twisted grin, stood motionless by the door. Her eyes were now fixed on me, those empty, soulless eyes that seemed to stare right through me. It was like she could see my very soul, and it terrified me more than anything else. She didn't blink, didn't move, just watched, waiting. The whispers started to change, becoming more distinct, more coherent. It was as if the room was speaking to me through the voices of those who had come before. They said things I couldn't understand, their language foreign, like it didn't belong in this world. But then, there was one voice that cut through the rest. It was a low growl, dark and guttural, so deep that it felt like the sound was coming from beneath the floorboards. "Run, now!" I didn't know if I could trust the voice. I didn't know if it was just part of the madness that was closing in on me, but I didn't care. I needed to get out of that room. I needed to get away from her. With all the strength I could muster, I jerked my leg again. The cord loosened just enough for me to pull free. I scrambled to my feet, ignoring the pain in my ankle, and staggered toward the door, my heart pounding in my chest. But the moment I touched the door handle, a chill ran through me, colder than anything I had ever felt before. It wasn't just the temperature, it was the feeling that something was behind me. I knew, without looking, that she was there, watching. I turned the handle slowly, cautiously, praying that the door wouldn't creak, praying that she wouldn't hear me. But it did. The door squeaked loudly, echoing through the room, and the woman in the corner tilted her head, that unsettling smile stretching even wider. She took a step forward, her long, skeletal fingers twitching at her sides, as if she was anticipating the moment I would turn around. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I flung the door open and stumbled out into the hallway, but the moment I stepped across the threshold, I realized something. The hallway, it was different. It wasn't the same dark, musty place I had seen earlier. No, now it was longer, stretching far beyond the dimensions of the house as I remembered them. The walls were covered in rot, peeling like old skin, and there were strange markings scratched into the wood, symbols that I had never seen before, symbols that seemed to twist and writhe under my gaze. I should have known then. I should have known this wasn't just a house. It wasn't just a building. It was alive. I heard the woman's voice again, this time clearer, more insistent. "Come back." I spun around, but there was nothing there. No one. Only the dark, silent hallway, stretching into the unknown. I kept moving, my feet carrying me forward, against my better judgment, down the hallway. Each step felt heavier, like the floor was pulling me in, sinking me deeper into whatever nightmare this house had become. The temperature dropped again, and I could see my breath swirling around me in the cold air. The walls around me seemed to close in, the markings on them growing more pronounced, more violent. Some of them looked like faces, twisted and distorted, their mouths open in silent screams. I could hear them now, faint whispers rising from the walls, urging me to stop, to turn back. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. I moved faster, my pulse pounding in my ears, the only sound in the oppressive silence of the hallway. And then, just as I thought I might make it to the end, I saw something. A door. But not just any door. This one was different. It wasn't old and decrepit like the rest. This one was pristine, untouched by time or decay. The wood was smooth, the edges sharp, the handle gleaming in the dim light. It didn't belong here. It didn't belong in this house, in this cursed place. Something about it called to me, just like the light had earlier. Just like the woman had. I approached it, hesitantly at first, but then with more confidence, driven by some invisible force I couldn't understand. I reached for the handle, and as my fingers brushed against the cold metal, the whispering stopped. Complete silence. I pulled the door open. Beyond it was nothing. A void. It stretched endlessly, an abyss that seemed to swallow the very light around me. There was no floor, no ceiling, just an endless, swirling blackness. It looked like a hole in the fabric of reality itself, something that shouldn't exist. Something that couldn't exist. And then, from within that darkness, I heard it. A voice, low and gravelly, filled with malice. Asterisk, you shouldn't have opened it, asterisk. Before I could react, a gust of wind, no, more like a force, shot through the door. It pushed me back, slamming me against the hallway wall. My vision blurred, the darkness closing in around me, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw them. Faces. Dozens of faces, pale and contorted in agony, their eyes wide, their mouths open in silent screams. They were pressed against the other side of the void, reaching through, trying to get out. I had no time to think. I ran. I didn't care about the woman. I didn't care about the house. I just needed to get out, to leave, to escape. My feet pounded against the floor as I ran, every door I passed slamming shut behind me, as if the house was trying to trap me, keep me inside. Then, I saw it. The staircase. I didn't even know how I got to it, but there it was, rising in front of me, a spiral staircase that seemed to go on forever. I didn't hesitate. I didn't even think. I bolted up the stairs, my legs burning with the effort, the sound of my footsteps reverberating in the silence, louder and louder with each step. But just as I reached the top, I froze. There, standing in the doorway at the top of the stairs, was the woman. Her eyes were even blacker now, like the void I had seen behind the door, and her smile, if you could even call it that, was stretched impossibly wide, far beyond the limits of human anatomy. Asterisk, you shouldn't have come, asterisk. Her voice was no longer a whisper. It was a command. A demand. And then, something inside me snapped. The terror, the fear, it all turned into rage. I screamed at her, not caring anymore. I'm not afraid of you. I didn't know if I believed those words, but I had to say them. I had to believe them. And then, for the first time, the woman moved. Slowly, her head tilted, a sound like bones cracking filled the air. She stepped forward, her long, spindly fingers reaching out toward me, the nails like jagged blades, scraping against the wood as she moved. I backed away, my hands shaking, but I couldn't go anywhere. The stairs behind me seemed to stretch downward, farther than I could go. She was almost upon me. And then, I heard it again. The voice. Asterisk, run, asterisk. This time, it wasn't a whisper. It wasn't a command. It was a plea. I turned. I ran.